The stars outside Colony Zeta 9 glimmered like distant dreams, unaware of the nightmare that was about to unfold. It was a peaceful outpost, a symbol of humanity's expansion into the stars. Located on the edge of the galaxy, Zeta 9 had been a beacon of hope. Earth's colony ships had ventured out, and this settlement was one of many that had begun to thrive, spreading the reach of humankind across the galaxy. The colony's artificial atmosphere hummed with life as the settlers worked, studied, and built their future. But this tranquility was nothing more than a fragile illusion. It all started with a flash in the sky. At first, it seemed like a meteor, a burning streak falling from the heavens. But no. The sky split open with the roar of alien engines as ships of unimaginable size and power appeared out of nowhere. These ships didn't look like anything the people of Zeta 9 had ever seen. Their black, jagged shapes shimmered against the stars, their hulls reflecting a cold, metallic sheen that seemed to absorb the light around them. There were hundreds of them. And then, there was one ship that dwarfed them all, the flagship of the invasion, hovering ominously over the colony like a vulture circling its prey. The alarms blared across Zeta 9. At first, the settlers thought it was a drill. There had been rumors about potential threats from the unknown regions of space, but nothing serious. Nothing like this. But as the shadows of the massive alien fleet loomed over the colony, panic spread like wildfire. The high-pitched shriek of the emergency sirens echoed through the streets, and people began to scramble, grabbing whatever they could to prepare for an evacuation that they knew deep down wasn't going to happen. The message from Earth had not come. The ships overhead were unlike anything humanity had ever faced. These weren't the same old threats they had learned to fight off with lasers and shields. No, these invaders were different. Then came the first blast. A sharp right pulse of energy shot out from the flagship, and before anyone could react, the central command tower of Zeta 9 was torn apart. The explosion was deafening. It sent shockwaves through the atmosphere, shaking buildings to their foundations. The colony's defensive systems flickered to life, but they were no match for the power that the alien ships wielded. Anti-aircraft fire lit up the sky, but the enemy ships were too fast, too agile. Their weapons fired with deadly accuracy, obliterating Zeta 9's meager defenses in a matter of minutes. The chaos was unbearable. People screamed as they ran, scrambling for shelter, but there was nowhere to hide. The streets, once filled with life, were now filled with destruction and confusion. Every building seemed to tremble as the alien bombardment rained down. Explosions echoed through the colony, sending plumes of smoke and fire rising into the dark sky. The once thriving hub of human civilization was crumbling under the weight of a power they had never anticipated. In the command center, the last line of defense was their fleet, the Nexus 1, the pride of human space travel. It was one of the few ships capable of taking on a threat of this scale. It had been designed for situations exactly like this, an emergency response ship built for defense and to hold off larger enemies. The ship was powered up and ready for launch. But even as it broke through the atmosphere and descended into space, the fleet knew it was a long shot. The Nexus 1 was fast, yes, but it was alone. And against hundreds of enemy ships, what hope did one ship have? As the Nexus 1 flew towards the alien fleet, the crew's faces were filled with determination, but also fear. The captain, Commander Elias Drake, gripped the controls tightly, staring at the massive enemy ships on the monitor. They were like blackened mountains in space, their weapon systems tracking his every move. The Nexus 1 fired its weapons, but the beams barely scratched the surface of the alien ships. The enemy responded with devastating force, and within seconds, the Nexus 1 was struck by a wave of firepower that sent it tumbling through the void. The shields held for a moment, but they were weakening quickly. Commander Drake's voice came through the comms, steady but tight. Brace for impact. The Nexus 1 tried to break through, but the alien fleet was too overwhelming. With a final desperate burst of speed, the Nexus 1 engaged its FTL drives, making a dash toward the heart of the enemy formation, trying to find a weakness, a single opening. But the aliens were prepared. As soon as the Nexus 1 entered range, their mothership unleashed a concentrated beam of energy that tore through the warship's shields, and within seconds, the Nexus 1 was gone, its wreckage drifting in space, a testament to humanity's last stand. Back on Zeta 9, the remaining survivors watched in horror as their last hope vanished into the cold darkness of space. The enemy fleet continued its assault, each strike causing the ground to shake. There was no escape. The evacuation shuttles had been destroyed before they even had a chance to launch. The colony was being wiped off the map. The survivors had no choice but to surrender or die. With Zeta 9 on the brink of destruction, Earth's command center received the final transmission from the colony. Zeta 9 is lost. They're coming for Earth. We need to act. Neloo. The moment the transmission from Colony Zeta 9 ended, silence fell over Earth's command center. For a long moment, there was no movement, no sound, as the weight of the news settled in. The enemy was real. The threat was undeniable. Zeta 9, once a symbol of humanity's expansion, was gone. And now, the unknown alien force was heading straight for Earth, their next target. High-ranking military officials and scientists gathered in the command center, all eyes fixed on the main display screen. The alien fleet, a seemingly endless armada of black ships, was advancing through the stars, on a direct course for Earth. There was no time for panic. There was no time for hesitation. The fate of humanity was hanging by a thread. Admiral Emily Voss stood in front of the console, her face drawn with concern but her eyes steely with determination. "Activate the warship program," she said, her voice calm but sharp. It was a command that carried the weight of centuries of preparation. The warship program was humanity's last line of defense, a contingency plan created in secret, hidden away deep within Earth's military archives, just in case. The program had been designed for moments like this, when everything else failed, when no other option remained. The warship program had been conceived in the aftermath of humanity's first encounters with alien forces, designed to be a force multiplier for humanity in case of an existential threat. The idea was simple yet terrifying. Earth had stockpiled over 700,000 warships. Massive, heavily armed, eye-controlled vessels that had been hidden away in underground bunkers or dormant space stations, awaiting activation. Most of these ships were old, their designs out of date, and many had never even been tested in combat. But they were humanity's last hope. Admiral Voss's fingers hovered over the command panel. This was a plan that had not been used in centuries, a program that had not been activated in the modern era. But in this moment, with Earth's survival at stake, there was no other choice. The order was given. Initiate the launch sequence. The ground beneath the command center rumbled as deep within Earth's military facilities. Long-forgotten silos opened, revealing massive warships that had been gathering dust for decades. Automated systems began to power up, their engines sputtering to life as they slowly moved into position. Most of these warships were powered by artificial intelligence, long dormant but now waking up to a new terrifying purpose. Some of the ships had been built with human crew members in mind, but the vast majority would be piloted by the machines themselves. There was no time to train new crews. Humanity had to rely on its technology to survive. Thousands of warships, both old and new, began to rise from their hidden launch pads across the globe. Massive craft, some the size of cities, slowly took off, shuddering as their engines fired. The sky above Earth was suddenly filled with the roar of their engines. At first, the ships seemed almost insignificant compared to the massive alien fleet, but as more and more warships lifted into the void, they began to form a formidable defense perimeter around the planet. However, doubts lingered in the hearts of many. The alien fleet had proven itself to be far more advanced than anything humanity had encountered before. The weaponry on the alien ships had decimated Zeta 9 in a matter of hours, and their technology seemed light years ahead of anything humanity had developed. Could the old warships, most of them outdated and ill-suited for deep space combat, really stand a chance? Would the ships be able to protect Earth, or were they simply delaying the inevitable? The question weighed heavily on Admiral Voss's mind as she watched the fleets begin to assemble in orbit. They had no time for second thoughts. The alien ships were already on their way, their approach quickening. With Earth's population at risk, there was no room for failure. The world's fate was now in the hands of these ancient warships and the artificial intelligence that piloted them. As the last of the ships broke through Earth's atmosphere and entered space, humanity's hopes rested on the shoulders of these forgotten machines. A defensive perimeter was quickly established, with hundreds of warships patrolling the outer reaches of Earth's orbit, each ship on high alert. Yet, the feeling of impending doom was hard to ignore. Earth had no idea how powerful the alien invaders truly were, or what they had in store for humanity. The enemy's response came within minutes. The massive alien mothership, which had been silent until now, sent out a communication to the human fleet. The message was brief but chilling. You are weak. We have already destroyed your outposts. Earth will be no different. Prepare for your extinction. The alien ships began to advance, their weapons primed and ready. Humanity's warships, though numerous, were far from evenly matched. As the first shots were fired, the human fleet was met with a barrage of alien weaponry that shook their systems. The old warships fought back with everything they had, firing at the incoming ships with everything in their arsenal. But each shot seemed to do little more than irritate the invaders. Admiral Voss stood at the command center, watching the battle unfold on the holographic display. The tension was unbearable. The vastness of space seemed to shrink around them as the two fleets collided, the first signs of a war that would determine humanity's future. Engage all defensive protocols, she ordered, her voice steady despite the chaos unfolding. We will not go down without a fight. The sound of weapons fire and explosions filled the comms as human ships clashed with alien forces. The skies above Earth were alive with fire, the fate of the entire planet hanging in the balance. But even as the first wave of human ships moved to engage the enemy, a shadow loomed in the distance. The alien mothership had just powered up its primary weapon, an energy beam capable of destroying entire cities, and it was aimed straight at Earth. The countdown had begun. The massive alien mothership loomed in Earth's orbit, its silhouette dark against the stars, a harbinger of the destruction to come. As the energy beam powered up, a low hum reverberated through space, a sound that seemed to shake the very fabric of the universe. The human fleet, still in disarray from the initial assault, struggled to form any real defense against the overwhelming alien force. The vastness of the enemy ships, their advanced technology, and their sheer numbers made humanity's 700,000 warships seem like nothing more than a minor inconvenience. Commander Elias Drake, aboard the Nexus One, was among the few human leaders who still held any hope. Despite the fleet's dire position, he refused to back down. The Nexus One, a ship originally built as a last resort weapon, was humanity's pride and joy. It was faster, stronger, and more advanced than most of the other ships in the fleet, but even it stood little chance against the alien armada. Yet, it was the only ship left that could buy the Earth a little more time. Commander Drake's voice crackled over the comms. We can't let them fire that beam. If it hits Earth, we're finished. The entire planet will be wiped out in one shot. He wasn't wrong. The alien mothership's energy weapon was designed for one purpose: to destroy entire planets. It was a weapon of mass destruction that could wipe out all of Earth's cities in a single pulse. The attack on Zeta 9 had been a warm-up. If the aliens succeeded in firing this weapon, Earth would be nothing more than a memory. The battle in space intensified. Human warships launched every weapon they had, firing lasers, missiles, and plasma bolts toward the enemy fleet. Some of the shots struck alien ships, causing them to shudder and explode. But for every alien ship that was destroyed, two more seemed to take its place. The human fleet's numbers were quickly dwindling as the aliens retaliated with terrifying efficiency. Their shields absorbed everything the humans threw at them, and their weapons obliterated human ships in seconds. "We're losing," muttered Lieutenant Maya Rivera, the tactical officer on the Nexus 1. "The fleet can't hold out much longer. The aliens are too powerful." Drake's face tightened with determination as he stared at the holographic display of the battle unfolding in front of him. His eyes shifted from the alien mothership to the remaining human warships, which were desperately trying to form a defensive perimeter around Earth. The Nexus 1 was one of the few ships that still had a full crew and operational weapons, but even it couldn't stop the inevitable without help. "Lieutenant Rivera, how many ships are left with operational weapons?" Drake asked. "Maybe a dozen or so, sir," she replied, voice steady despite the chaos. "Most of the fleet has been destroyed or is on the verge of being crippled. The aliens are picking us apart." Drake's mind raced. There had to be something, anything, they could do. He wasn't about to watch Earth fall without taking the fight to the enemy. As the mothership's weapon charged, he knew there was only one option left. It was a desperate move, a suicide mission, but it was their only chance. He slammed his fist on the control panel. "We're going to take out the mothership. Full speed ahead. Engage FTL drives now." The Nexus 1 roared to life as the FTL, faster than light, engines kicked into high gear. The ship shot forward, its engines glowing bright against the darkness of space. Drake's hand gripped the controls tightly as he steered the ship directly toward the alien mothership. "Commander, what are you doing?" Rivera's voice was filled with disbelief. "You can't take on that thing alone. We need tow." "I know what I'm doing, Lieutenant," Drake interrupted. "This is the only way. We take out the mothership, or we all die here. Full throttle. I'll give them something they can't ignore." The Nexus 1 shot through the battlefield, weaving between destroyed ships and explosions. Every second counted. They were running out of time. The alien mothership's primary weapon had nearly fully charged, and Earth was in its crosshairs. Drake could feel the weight of the decision pressing down on him. He didn't have the luxury of thinking it through. There was no plan B. The alien mothership's weapons fired a series of warning shots, narrowly missing the Nexus 1 as it streaked through the debris field. The closer they got, the more intense the alien counterfire became. The Nexus 1 was hit several times, shaking violently as its shields absorbed the incoming blasts, but they were weakening with each strike. The alien ships began to target them specifically, knowing that this human warship was the only real threat left. "Brace for impact," Drake shouted to his crew as the Nexus 1 blasted forward at maximum speed. They were only seconds away from reaching the mothership's massive hull. In the chaos of the battle, the alien mothership finally powered up its primary weapon. A massive beam of energy, brighter than 1,000 suns, began to form at the tip of the ship. It was aimed directly at Earth. The beam pulsed with raw energy, preparing to unleash hell on humanity's homeworld. With a desperate cry, Drake slammed the Nexus 1's engines into overdrive. The warship lurched forward as it made a final, suicidal charge toward the heart of the alien ship. At the last possible moment, he activated the ship's internal explosives, setting them to detonate upon impact. The Nexus 1 slammed into the side of the mothership with a thunderous crash, shaking the entire space around them. The alien ship shuddered as the human warship's final explosion triggered a chain reaction. The energy beam, just moments from firing, flickered and died as the mothership's core began to collapse. The massive craft let out an earth-shaking screech as it tore apart in a brilliant explosion, sending a shockwave through space. The battle paused for a split second, the silence hanging heavy. The alien fleet faltered, caught off guard by the destruction of their flagship. The remaining warships began to retreat, as if uncertain of how to proceed without their leader. But the war wasn't over yet. Humanity had won a battle, but the enemy still had power in numbers. The remaining human warships, battered and burning, regrouped around Earth. Commander Drake's voice came through the comms, barely audible over the crackling static. We've bought Earth some time, but the real fight is just beginning. And so, the battle for Earth continued. The destruction of the alien mothership was a momentary victory, but the cost was unimaginable. The Nexus 1, the last hope of humanity, was gone, its wreckage drifting in the cold silence of space. Commander Elias Drake, along with the brave crew who had fought alongside him, had given everything to protect Earth. The mothership was destroyed, but the alien fleet still loomed, its countless ships waiting for the next move. Humanity had been given a temporary reprieve, but the war was far from over. As the human fleet regrouped around Earth, a sense of urgency hung in the air. The remaining warships were battered, many of them on the brink of collapse. The enemy's forces were still formidable, and though their leadership had been crippled, the alien fleet was far from defeated. For now, humanity had the advantage of knowing the enemy's tactics, but that was little comfort when facing an opponent so far beyond their own technology. Admiral Emily Voss stood at the command center, her eyes glued to the holographic display of the battlefield. The alien fleet, though disorganized from the loss of their mothership, was still powerful. Thousands of enemy ships remained, their weapons deadly and precise. The human fleet, now reduced to just a fraction of its original size, was struggling to hold its position. "Admiral," Lieutenant Maya Rivera spoke up, her voice tinged with exhaustion. "The aliens are regrouping. They're reorganizing their forces. If we don't act fast, they'll strike again. And this time, they won't be caught off guard." Voss nodded grimly. The human fleet was in no condition to face another full-scale battle. They were low on ammunition, their shields were failing, and most of their warships were either heavily damaged or completely incapacitated. And yet, retreat was not an option. Earth was their home. If they fled, it would be the end. "We don't have time to rebuild or regroup," Voss said, her voice steady. "We have one shot. We have to make it count." The remaining human warships, battered and broken, were positioned in a loose defensive formation around Earth. Their energy shields flickered weakly, the vessels struggling to maintain cohesion. But there was no turning back now. The alien forces would not wait for them to recover. The time had come for the final push. In the cold vacuum of space, the remaining alien ships began to close in. Their once immense fleet had been reduced, but the survivors were still a terrifying force to face. Their advanced weaponry, capable of vaporizing entire human ships with a single shot, would make any direct engagement a suicide mission. But the humans had learned something crucial from the alien tactics. Their ships, though technologically superior, had a weakness. Commander Drake's sacrifice had revealed an opening. The aliens had placed too much reliance on their mothership's power, leaving a gap in their defensive strategies. It wasn't much, but it was enough to exploit. Admiral Voss turned to the remaining fleet commanders, her face hardening with resolve. "We'll divide the fleet into two groups. One will create a distraction by launching an all-out assault on the remaining alien ships, while the other will target their remaining flagship, a massive destroyer that's been directing their forces. If we can take that out, we can cripple their ability to coordinate. We hit them with everything we've got." The plan was risky, and the odds were overwhelmingly against them. But humanity had never been a species to back down from a fight. The crew of the remaining warships had seen what happened when they gave up. Zeta 9 had been destroyed. Earth was next. But now, they had something to fight for, something worth protecting. As the battle began, the human warships launched a barrage of firepower toward the remaining alien ships. The enemy retaliated immediately, firing their weapons with devastating force. The human ships fought bravely, their weapons lighting up the darkness of space in a chaotic, dazzling display of destruction. Explosions rocked both sides, sending debris floating into the void. In the midst of the chaos, the second group of human ships, led by the Starfire, a heavily damaged vessel but still operational, made their way toward the heart of the alien fleet. They targeted the alien flagship, a massive, ominous ship surrounded by a protective guard of smaller vessels. The Starfire led the charge, its crew firing everything they had as they fought their way through the alien defenses. As the Starfire drew closer to the flagship, the rest of the human fleet continued to create chaos, drawing the attention of the enemy forces. For a brief moment, the alien fleet seemed distracted, divided. This was their chance. "Target the flagship's core," Voss commanded over the comms. "Hit them with everything we've got." The remaining warships, with the Starfire leading the charge, opened fire. The alien flagship's shields flickered under the onslaught, and for the first time in the battle, the alien forces seemed vulnerable. The human warships fired their final shots, each explosion sending tremors through the alien fleet. The flagship's energy core, vulnerable from the sustained attack, began to destabilize. A massive shockwave ripped through the heart of the alien ship. It exploded with a blinding flash, its destruction sending a shockwave through the remaining alien fleet. The loss of their flagship sent the invaders into disarray, their formations breaking apart as the remaining ships scattered, no longer able to coordinate their attacks. The human fleet, battered and exhausted, watched in awe as the alien forces began to retreat. It wasn't a victory yet, but it was enough to send the invaders fleeing. For the first time in what felt like an eternity, humanity had the upper hand. But there was no celebration. Not yet. The cost had been immense. Thousands of human lives had been lost. Many ships were destroyed or disabled beyond repair. The survivors were left to pick up the pieces of their shattered fleet, knowing that though the battle was won, the war had only just begun. Admiral Voss stood at the command center, staring out at the vastness of space. Earth was safe, for now, but the alien forces would regroup. They would return. She knew that the galaxy was full of enemies far more dangerous than they had ever imagined. Humanity had just become a target. But one thing was certain: their resolve had been tested, and they had proven that even against impossible odds, humanity would fight to the last breath. "We've survived today," Voss said, her voice calm but resolute. "But we must be ready. This war is far from over. And next time, we'll be ready to take the fight to them." And with that, the human fleet drifted through space, battered but unbroken. The seeds of humanity's future now planted in the stars.